Good evening, everybody. This is Wicked and Mike and AJ coming to you talking some Dynasty football tonight. Today, we're going to be doing a little segment on make or break guys, some players that we feel like need to have big years or they're going to see their Dynasty value really start to take a hit, maybe evaporate completely in some cases. How you doing this evening there, Mike?
I'm breaking in and out here. So yeah, it is definitely make it or break it for a lot of these players that we're talking about. I think that's what you said, but I was breaking in and out. So I'm kind of hoping that's what you said and hopefully didn't curse me out
Yeah.
or anything.
Yep. Nope, you caught on right where I laid it down there. Yeah, so we're gonna talk some make or break players. Anything you're working on over on your personal side you want to plug real quick?
No, not much. The Dynasty Dogs were in the middle of our dog tags and doghouse segments for the divisions. So we go through each division. Rich and I will give a dog tag and doghouse for two teams in each division. Players that we're in on, players that we're out on. Just to keep it fun, keep it fresh, something different. So that's really all we're working on right now. Starting to look at the 2025 class a little bit now too.
Yeah. Summer scouting time.
It's never too early. What are you working on over there, AJ? Still just doing the pro football stuff?
Yeah, that's taken up most of my free time, unfortunately. But I am hopefully going to get into some summer scouting for the 2025 class pretty soon in the next maybe week or so.
You got any guys that are going to be kind of at the top of your list?
I mean, just the guys that I think are kind of on everybody's list for receivers. It's Luther Burden and Ted McMillan. I'm really excited about Evan Stort. I'm excited to watch him. Running back wise, Ashton Jeanty is a personal favorite of mine. I think if a lot of people, if they don't know who he is, will hopefully after this year. Small school or smaller program, but really, really talented player.
Yeah, for me, it's Trey Harris from Ole Miss.
I saw you tweet about him today.
Yeah, one of my favorite receivers of this draft class already. Size speed combo. I think he's listed at about 6'2", 200 pounds. X receiver, prototypical XY wide receiver. Lined up outside about 85% of the time, so it's pretty much what he's going to be. Reminds me of a little bit of like a George Pickens and AJ Brown combo, just because of the way I really like his yards after catch ability. So I'm very interested in him as well.
Ole Miss is going to be fun this year.
They are. Yeah, with Juice Wells and Trey Harris and Jackson Dart.
Right on, guys. Well, so I am not going to be doing any scouting anytime soon. Way too busy. I've got 75 Dynasty leagues that I'm doing, and a bunch of leagues for T2T. And then we have this weekly show, and then I've personal life too. I got 4 kids that I have to take care of, so that's job and business and all of that fun stuff. So I'll wait until we get closer to draft time again to start doing my scouting. I'll just rely on you guys in the meantime. All right. So before we get into it, not a whole lot of news. Once again, you'll get some tidbits here and there as training camp gets closer. I think a lot of teams are in mandatory mini camps right now. I'd say everything so far is pretty chalk there. A couple guys not showing up for camp, but more or less expected. Other than that, really only news items, Justin Jefferson's record-setting deal, highest paid non-quarterback in the league. I think he comes in at around like 34, 36 million, something like that a year. We all knew that was coming. He's the best. He's the best receiver in the league. We all knew that he was going to be the highest paid once that contract kind of got worked out. I don't know how long he'll stay there, but he's got that title for now. I know CD Lamb, same agent as Justin Jefferson, is also currently negotiating a deal. So I feel like could be short-lived at the top of the totem pole as far as raw numbers go, but we'll see how everything shakes out.
That's what actually I was going to ask you as the Cowboys fan of this trio.
Yeah.
Do you think he's paid
Uh-oh.
Ruh-roh.
more than Jefferson? And do that?
I'm on the edge of my seat
Am I
waiting
back?
for the question.
Oh,
Oh,
yep.
okay.
You're back.
Do you think he gets more than Jefferson? And do you think he deserves to get paid more than Jefferson?
So I think that Justin Jefferson is inarguably a better receiver than CeeDee Lamb. I don't think that the gap is very big, but I do acknowledge that I see that there is a gap there. Justin Jefferson is without a doubt the best receiver in the league right now. But if you're talking about impact to their team, CeeDee Lamb is right there with Justin Jefferson. CeeDee Lamb is the engine of the Dallas Cowboys offense. They have basically said, okay, Dak, you get CeeDee Lamb and nothing else, and you just have to make that work. And they have. And I think that says a lot to the talent of CeeDee Lamb. The other part of this, like I mentioned, is that CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson have the same agent. And so I imagine that these negotiations that have been ongoing at the same time with Minnesota and with Dallas for their respective players are kind of parallel to each other in the fact that you're going to see a lot of the same structure in the contracts. You're going to see a lot of the same language. And I imagine that the numbers are going to be very, very similar. What an easy route for this agent, man. He's got two very top of the market receivers that are up for contract at the same time. He basically just has to negotiate the same deal with two different teams and get paid twice. Like, I think that Justin Jefferson probably comes in a hair above raw money wise, but it's going to be so close that it doesn't matter. I think that the Jamar Chase deal, whenever that comes through, will be the one that knocks Justin Jefferson off the top of the mountain there. But
yeah, it's probably about right.
Yeah, I mean the other thing that, like, as a Cowboys fan, that I'm just so tired of hearing is all of the Dallas Cowboys wait too long to sign their players crap. Like it does. For one, is CeeDee Lamb really in a hurry to sign his contract? Probably not. And so maybe Dallas is giving him good numbers, and it just doesn't matter because he wants Justin Jefferson's deal done first. And again, they have the same agent, so I'm sure that that factors into, like, the agent's like, okay, let me get this deal done first, and then we'll get your deal done next. I'm sure that kind of stuff happens as well. And then with the way the salary cap goes up, what's the benefit of signing a player early? Like, yeah, they could sign CeeDee Lamb last year for maybe $32 million. They have to sign him this year for 36, but the cap went up $28 million. So does it really matter? I see a lot of people complaining about it, and it just doesn't make any sense when you actually dive into the actual impact of when you're signing your player. All right, that's about it for our news this week. Hopefully we start getting some actual stuff to talk about from these OTAs and then training camp starting soon.
You don't think that Dan Campbell saying that Jameson Williams has arrived is worth talking about? You don't think that's real news?
Probably not. I want to see some. I want to see some live scrimmage. I want to see some one-on-ones. I want to see some actual footage of players looking good in pads and against actual running through actual reps with real drills. You know, not against air.
One of us is going to be talking about Jameson Williams tonight.
Yeah.
I thought about him.
You say hi? You say hello?
I tried to.
Hello. Yeah, I went with Jameson Williams on this one because he has been picked up a little bit of hype on the internet.
Yeah,
but
I tried to go a little as much out of the box as I could with these picks because I feel like there are some like obvious ones.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to go a little out of the box if I could, but we'll see.
And to be fair, we could real quick. To be fair, we could have probably put a majority of the 2022 wide receiver class on this list. You know, Jameson Williams, Treylon Burks, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, All those guys.
Traylon Burks.
Right. Right. But all those guys are pretty much, pretty much all those guys are on make it or break it terms right now. You know what I mean? The entire 2022 wide receiver class could have been on each of our lists, to be honest with you.
Would be a big one right now. Jameson Williams, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Give them some time. Some of these guys are going to hit. I'm confident that not every single one of those dudes is going to be a bust, but it's getting to the point where it's put up or shut up time. You know, like you only get so many chances. And I'm not just talking fantasy. I mean, like real life football on the field. Like you don't have that big of an opportunity, even if you are a high draft pick. You will run out of runway if you don't do something with it eventually. Especially on teams that are having like coaching turnover and that kind of stuff. Like if you got drafted by a coaching staff that's not there anymore, oh man, you better hurry up and start producing, because they are not the ones that wanted you there in the first place. So some of these dudes really got to step it up, or they're going to find themselves looking for a job here pretty soon, and being pretty invaluable, pretty worthless on dynasty squads too. So let's just jump right in here, man. So, Mike, who was your first guy that you wanted to talk about?
I'll start right where AJ brought up Jameson Williams. That was my make it or break it for him. He was a 12th overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft of the Detroit Lions, and his dynasty value has pretty much plummeted ever since that draft pick. He was a first-round pick in our rookie drafts as well. I would say he's roughly about a second-round pick value at this point. So he's pretty acquirable right now. But to be honest with you guys, I want no parts of Jameson Williams. Like I said, this is a make or break season for him, but I really want no parts of it. He's the fourth option at best on that Detroit Lions team behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously. Laporta, Gibbs. I know that there is some hope and some love for him on Twitter right now, but you know, I was just looking at some of the stats for him. In 18 games, he's played technically one full season between 2022 and 2023. He's never had a game over 70 yards receiving in a football game. In 18, that's pretty alarming to me.
Yeah.
I'm completely out. I traded my only share of him and a third for Keon Coleman. And to be honest, I'd rather re-roll the dice on Keon Coleman in a better situation. Well, it's a really good situation in Detroit, but he's nowhere near the top of the chart like Keon Coleman is, you know? So I don't know, man. It really is put up or shut up time for him with the health concerns, the off-the-field issues. I'm out, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been getting Jameson as a throw-in on deals. That's about the only way that I'll have him on my rosters if it's working a larger deal, and we're pretty close, but I feel like I just want a little bit extra on top. I'm cool with having Jameson thrown in there because maybe I don't have a lot of faith in him at this point, but maybe.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how most of the community probably feels about him at this point. If I'm a Lions fan, I still feel all right about him being an important part of their offense for a while, but from a fantasy perspective, it's just tough to see the path to him breaking through and being like a big time producer. Anything other than like in best ball, you know, he's worth a little something. You know, he'll probably have some spike weeks this year, hopefully.
Yeah,
but beyond that, it's looking fairly grim. Unless
I think he's gonna serve a very important role on the Lions squad in real life, as the deep guy, the clear out guy, because Amon-Ra, Laporta, Gibbs, they really thrive in that short to intermediate range, especially over the middle. And Goff is very accurate and on time in that range as well. And so Jameson's going to be a decoy a lot. And that's going to be really important to their team. And he's going to get some of those long bombs when the coverage does not respect that. But he's not going to be somebody that you can rely on. There's just too many weapons in that offense. And There's not enough to go around, and we're also forgetting about the fact that Dan Campbell likes to run the ball in the first place. Like, he doesn't want to throw the ball 35, 40 times to begin with. So how much passing volume is there to go around to begin with?
Yeah, in the same breath, Dan Campbell is saying Jameson Williams has arrived. He also says he wants to run Jahmyr Gibbs more. So you can't really do both of those things, to be honest with you.
Well, and I only really believe one of them. So
yeah.
All right, AJ, who is your first guy that you want to talk about?
I will, I guess, stick with a receiver and go talk about T. Higgins, who was not like one of the first guys to pop into my mind for this type of thing, definitely. But the reason I wanted to talk about him is because he is someone who I feel like it's been a little surprising to me how he hasn't lost more value than he has so far. Like, if he had lost more value, I would be very in on him. I think it's like appropriate, the amount of like where he is right now. But if you look at the last 3 years from his second year to last year, his yards per route run have gone down all 3 years from 2.26 to 1.9 to 1.6 last year. And now he's got maybe a little bit more target competition if he stays in Cincinnati and Jermaine Burton. And if he leaves, he won't have this built-in long-term excellent quarterback, like phenomenally accurate quarterback throwing to him for the rest of his career. He might, like, I could see him being a guy who goes to one of those like situations where he's the number one receiver and on a terrible offense, and he just kind of, you know, fades away a little bit. Now, it's also very possible, and hopefully he bounces back. It's a very likely, or a fairly likely outcome that he rounds back into form. But if he doesn't, and he has another, you know, just kind of middling year, and maybe he can't stay healthy again, I think dynasty owners are really going to get frustrated with him, and his value is going to drop quite a bit.
So you're playing the waiting game with T. Higgins?
Yeah, the situation just like being so up in the air scares me. He was in such a perfect situation before with, and I guess still now with, like a true number one receiver in Jamar Chase, elite quarterback, and then him as the second option. I don't think it's going to go very well if he's a number one receiver somewhere. I really don't. And I just don't know. Like, I don't know that he's ever going to get to that level that like people maybe thought after his second year, but I still think he can be like a perennial wide receiver too, if he gets his act kind of together. But you know, it'll be, this year will be very telling for him, I think.
Do you think that T gets another year of sustained value, or maybe even a bump in value if he is with Cincinnati this year, does okay, but ends up as a number one on a new team next year, which is what a lot of people thought was going to happen this year?
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how people react. I don't know if the sentiment is going to be, oh, now he's going to be the leading target guy. He can be who we always, you know, thought he was going to be, or if it'll be like what I was just saying of, oh man, I don't know that he's going to do very well as a number one receiver on probably a bad offense. Like, I remember last year saying he was going to go to the Panthers and have like 700 yards receiving until the end of time every year. I could see that happening if he goes to a bad offense. Like, I would rather him stay for fantasy purposes for his sake. But
well, another thing you got to think about is that there are some teams with really good quarterbacks who could definitely use receivers like T. Higgins. And I think so, like the Chargers and Buffalo are both teams that need a receiver, will probably still need a receiver next year, that have elite quarterbacks. And I think if T goes to a spot like that, you're going to see, even if he has a bad year this year, if he goes and signs with Buffalo, you're going to see his value jump.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think maybe T's got one more year. Just kind of depends on situation for him, though. It's going to be very situation dependent.
Yeah, if he goes to, I don't think he has to play well. If he goes to a situation like that, he'll go up in value. But if his situation stays the same or gets worse, and he doesn't have a good year this year, I think his value will drop quite a bit.
All right. Well, So I took some low-hanging fruit with my first one because I probably have more exposure to this player than any other player across all of my dynasty leagues. And it has not been fun to this point. But I have faith that it's all going to change this year when Kyle Pitts is catching passes from Kirk Cousins, and he's finally the tight end that we've been dreaming of since he entered the league.
Michael Penix.
And you could say this about Drake London too. Like Drake, everything I'm about to say about Kyle Pitts also is the exact reason why Drake London's in the same boat. And it's because the Falcons have had some of the worst quarterback play that I've ever seen for multiple seasons in a row now. And it's been sickening to watch. One of my least favorite stats from last year is that Kyle Pitts received 5 red zone targets.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely ridiculous. With the type of player he is, with his size and his speed and his ability, there is no reason why he should only be getting 5 targets in the red zone in an entire season. I think that some of that has to do with how bad the offense was. They didn't have a lot of red zone opportunity. I think that that's going to improve drastically. I still don't think the Falcons defense is going to be awesome. And so for that reason, I think the offense is going to need to be throwing a lot. They're really going to have to rely on those receiving weapons. And I think that the offense is going to get lots of opportunity to go out there and throw the ball all over the place. And I think that Kyle Pitts is going to be a big benefactor to that. However, we've been saying this about Kyle Pitts the entire time that Kyle Pitts has been in the league. And so now that we can agree that he's got a competent quarterback, nobody can say that it's the quarterback's fault because Kirk Cousins has supported Justin Jefferson, Hawkinson. Addison was tearing it up with Kirk Cousins. We can't blame the quarterback this year. And so Kyle Pitts is going to have to be elite or it's over, basically. Even if he has an okay year or a good but not great year, his dynasty value is going to sink dramatically because he's still being valued relatively high, top 5, top 6 tight end in most dynasty leagues still, just based on that upside. That's going to completely bottom out if he doesn't deliver on that ranking this year.
Yeah, one of the things that should have never happened last year was the fact that Jonnu Smith out-targeted Kyle Pitts in the red zone.
I cannot tell you how mad that made me.
Yeah,
I'm not joking. I have Kyle Pitts in probably 90% of my dynasty leagues because I've always been a Kyle Pitts believer. Every time he's had a bad game or a bad season, I'm buying the dip. I'm going out there. I'm going to acquire Kyle Pitts, and it hasn't paid off yet. And so I'm a little nervous this year. If it doesn't happen, I'm heavily invested. I've given up a lot to be heavily invested, and I'm going to be hurting in a lot of leagues if Kyle Pitts can't deliver.
The other thing about the upgraded quarterback is the fact that Kirk Cousins, we saw just, really did well with TJ Hawkinson, right? And that's a big plus in Kyle Pitts' favor. And the fact that we thought Atlanta would bring in another pass catcher in the draft. And to be honest, all they did was bring in Rondale Moore, and that shouldn't shiver your timbers or anything like that. So I think –
I don't know.
Who cares?
But
they're wide receivers.
It's going to be Pitts, London, Bijan, and then everybody else.
Yeah. So say Pitts finishes as like the tight end 8 this year in as a season – long thing.
Disappointed.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. But what do you think his dynasty, where do you think he would be in dynasty tight end rankings with a season like that?
Well, you cannot put at that point. He's got to get bumped down a tier or 2.
Mm-hmm. I will also say, yeah, I agree with that. One other thing, before I let you finish, it also kind of depends on what the worst case scenario is. Kyle Pitts has, a disappointing year, but also Kirk Cousins just plays badly. because then that'll give you even more reason to be like, no, but like Kirk Cousins wasn't very good. Like when he gets a good quarterback again.
Yeah. See, I don't want to be in that position again. I need definitive proof. So I need Kirk Cousins to be Kirk Cousins. That also being said, I think that if Kirk Cousins does not play well, at some point we're going to see Michael Penix.
That's true. That's
because and I think that Penix is a good enough quarterback to support elite receiving options.
Yeah, he can do what he did at Washington with.
So I think that out of the two of them, one of those quarterbacks will give us a large enough sample size to be like, okay, Kyle Pitts is it or he's not.
Yeah.
How many we've seen tons of these hyper elite athletic tight ends that just for some reason never become elite producers for fantasy.
So you think he ends up in like the Njoku, Ingram
exactly
area?
Evan Ingram, like pre-breakout with the Jaguars.
Yeah, I'm just looking at ADP. Like I know you guys have him higher, but just based on like, or not even ADP.
Yeah, I would say that he's like low end tight end 1, high end tight end 2. He's in that range.
Yeah.
He becomes one of those assets where you might still find a guy or two like me who believes that you can sell him to for a decent price, but everybody else is going to be so out on him by that point. You're going to be looking at like trading Kyle Pitts for second round picks and that kind of stuff, which is going to be heartbreaking. So I just really hope it doesn't happen.
That is
all right, guys. Before we get to our next group of make it or break it players, I just want to take a quick break and show you our Patreon.
Are you ready to take over your fantasy leagues and become a champion? Get the edge you need and join the Toilets to Titles Patreon today to get exclusive access to our T2T staff, weekly waiver wire shows, and Patreon exclusive leagues like our signature Frankenstank League. Members enjoy other amazing benefits such as monthly giveaways featuring autographed jerseys, collectibles, Yeti coolers, and more. Sign up now for as little as $9.99 per month and dominate your fantasy leagues like never before. Visit patreon.com/toilets to titles and let us help take your teams to the championship this season.
All right, guys. If you haven't subscribed to our Patreon yet, I'd recommend you go do that. We've got lots of leagues that we offer for our Patreon members exclusively, and then we have lots of giveaways and those sorts of things that you guys should really be taking advantage of, as well as access to the staff. You know, if you're a Patreon member and you have a Dynasty question, or you got a trade question, a draft question, whatever it may be, there's a whole chat room in there where you can just pop in and ask your questions to the staff members here at T2T if you're a Patreon member. So all right, let's start with AJ. Who's your second guy that you think needs to prove it this year or going to see his value destroyed?
Yeah, so for my next two guys, I decided to go after two guys that you had both put as in our My Guys episode.
Yeah, I noticed that.
But
that felt on purpose.
Yeah, no, once I did the first one wasn't, but once I did that, I was like, all right. But no, so yeah, I wanted to talk about Zamir White, and again, kind of like not the first guy who would come to your mind for this type of thing, because this is the first opportunity he's ever really going to get to have like a real role in an offense. But I do think there's a pretty real chance that it's also his last, because if he doesn't meet expectations, that is, like his whole situation right now reminds me a lot of Alexander Mattison last year. I totally think Zamir White is a better player than Alexander Mattison. And I think we'll see that when he gets a lot more carries than Alexander Mattison. But still, like, just in terms of their situations and like their like path to now, we're kind of similar. So Mattison was a backup for a long time for a really good running back. Then finally got his chance to start. This time last year on Keep Trade Cut, Alexander Mattison was RB18. And he's now RB70 just 1 year later.
Damn.
Zamir White, really similar situation where he backed up a really good running back for a while, and now he's going to get a chance to start. If he comes out, and he's behind a terrible offensive line, as was Mattison, if he just doesn't look great to start, or like just doesn't really get his footing, I could see him having a similar drop to Madison in the sense that he just goes sign somewhere to be, the back end of a committee somewhere. He, again, I do think is a lot better than Alexander Madison, I think. But just talking worst case scenario, if he doesn't produce this year, where his value could end up. And I think that that's not a too unrealistic situation.
Yeah, this just shows like how razor thin the margin of error for a running back is in the NFL.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. He's got 1 year to prove that he can do this. That's it. If he doesn't produce at a high level this season in his first opportunity, it's over. He will forever be part of a rotation, part of a committee, be a backup. He will never be the focal point again of any offense in the NFL if he does not come out and produce in his very first opportunity here. And he doesn't even get a full season to audition. It's gotta start happening right away. Like he's got to hit the ground running, literally. And that is how quickly the running back value can flip on you. Because
and even this is kind of also what happened to Madison. Even if Zamir White comes out and is like pretty good to start, like if he just has some fumble issues or something like that,
tweaks a hamstring,
just a little injury, and the backup, then it would be Alexander Madison and Dylan Laube and whoever else come in and are doing a good job. Then he suddenly is only getting half the carries instead of 75%.
Yeah.
And then I will give one little blurb for in his defense, and then one to say why things might not go well. So he was 14th Zamir White, that is, was 14th last year in rushing yards over expected per attempt, which is obviously a good mark. And it was a lot higher than where Jacobs was.
Yeah.
He was second in percentage of his carries that were above expectation. So he's not losing yards. He's getting what's blocked. Which those are two really good signs for next year. But all four defenses that he faced at the end of the year when he finally got his chance to start were 19th or lower last year in EPA, rushing EPA allowed per attempt. And so, when he gets a little bit of a tougher schedule and that offensive line doesn't hold up as well, we'll see how things go. But yeah, I just think is a really volatile player for next year.
He's a high risk for sure.
And it goes to what you said earlier, Dylan, about the coaching staff. This is technically still a brand new coaching staff. They started in the middle of the season with Antonio Pierce as the head coach. So, he may want to bring in his own running back next year if things don't really go his way. And he brought in Alexander Madison this year. He drafted Dylan Laube also this year, who I kind of like. I don't ever see him as like a 3-down back or anything like that, but he could take some work away from Zamir White, especially in the passing game. So we'll see.
Well, and on a team like the Raiders that has a lot of rebuilding left to do, if you're a young player, you're auditioning for whether or not you deserve to stay on the team for when the rebuild's done. So if Zamir White doesn't come in and look really good, they've got no reason to invest anything into him as part of this rebuild. And so he's likely to be replaced at some point in the next year or two. But if he can really come out and play like he did in those last 4 games last season, if he looks that good, then he's got a good shot of being a player that kind of surprises and sneaks up on you and becomes an RB1 with a pretty solidified role on a team that wants to keep him around. And that kind of situation is difficult to find for a running back. So it's going to be an interesting ride for him. I think we're going to kind of know the direction within the first month of the season on how this is going to play out for him, because this tends to become pretty apparent pretty quickly. The bad part is that the value for Zamir White is going to shift dramatically, and I think that
Even
he's got a lot more room to fall than he has to rise, and that's always a scary place to be with a dynasty asset.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, who's going to be your number 2 guy on the list here?
So I'm going to go from one Williams to another. This is a guy like I kind of liked, to be honest with you guys, and I'm a little concerned for his future. The next guy for me is going to be Javonte Williams, running back, Denver Broncos. Came bursting onto the season, his rookie season, 900 yards rushing, over 300 yards receiving. Was a guy I definitely thought could be a focal point to our dynasty rosters just with the amount of receptions and yards he was getting passing-wise. Then he tears his ACL in 2022. Comes back last year, kind of was a little bit in and out of like practices and in and out of games. 3.6 yards a carry, not really, something that you really want. You wanted it around the 4, a little bit closer to 4s or higher. This is his second year removed from the ACL, so that's usually like the kind of time frame you want for running backs. So this is a big part of it for him, and it is his contract year. So this is really a make or break season for Javonte Williams. And not only that, he's in a crowded room now. They really seem to like Jaleel McLaughlin. They brought in Audric Estime. Whether I don't think AJ is too high on Estime, and I don't know if we've talked about Estime at all, Dylan. But I'm a big Estime guy, so I think he could, give Javonte a little bit of hell if he doesn't, come out swinging like we thought he would. But we'll see. It's really a tough season for Javonte because he's second year off his ACL, contract year. So it really is make or break it for him.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. He was one of those guys who just like showed flashes of the talent and the potential for a long time, but then hasn't really like put everything all together yet. And he's just kind of running out of chances for the Broncos and for like fantasy owners' patience.
Yeah, Javonte's always been kind of a fade for me. I was never a fan. So I've managed to avoid a lot of the value spiral since his rookie season because I just didn't have him anywhere.
Yeah, I actually just shipped him off last night on a contending team. I traded him for Alvin Kamara straight up on a contending team.
I'd probably keep Javonte. I don't much.
Really?
Either. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just for PPR, I think him and Alvin Kamara are going to be
6-1, half dozen of another, in my opinion. They both carry pretty sizable risk. But anyway, besides the point, Javonte is somebody that I think is his leash is short. Mm-hmm. He has had opportunity, and like we were just talking about with Zamir, opportunity for running back comes and goes so fast. And it doesn't matter if you missed your opportunity because you got hurt or somebody else was doing a little better than you on the roster or the coaching staff changed. It doesn't matter. The opportunity comes and goes so fast for running backs. And I think that the opportunity has like mostly passed Javonte at this point, and he's like jogging after it, trying to reach back and grab it and be like, hey, wait, don't forget about me. And I think that's a tough situation to be in, especially with a coaching staff that is very obviously looking forward and instead of fixating on the current roster. I mean, you don't dump Russell Wilson's contract if you care about anything other than let's rebuild. They're fully committed to rebuilding. They're fully committed to kind of starting over and resetting and letting Sean Payton build a roster that he's happy with. And I don't personally see a situation where Javonte's part of that plan.
It's starting not to look that way.
Which might be fine for him because do you really want the running back on the Denver Broncos that badly anyway? I mean, like, how much value does he have at any point? But at the same time, like, he's got to show that he's worth something to somebody. And I don't know that he's going to get a great chance at that this year. I think he's going to end up being one of those guys who gets stuck in a committee for the rest of his time in the NFL because he missed his shot. And unfortunately, he missed his shot because he got hurt. But that's just the way it goes sometimes.
Let me ask you guys real quick, who would you rather have at their roundabout ADP? So Javante's ADP and for sleeper is at 71. He's going before guys like Tony Pollard. So Tony Pollard or Javante?
Tony.
I think I would take Javante on that one. That's
I
just
think
me
that's
personally.
pretty close, but I probably lean
Yeah.
Tony Pollard.
Javante or Najee?
Najee.
Najee for me on that one. Trey Benson or Javante, and it's Trey Benson for me.
Yeah. Trey Benson.
So that's kind of what you're looking at in startups in regards to Javante. So, we're pretty much 2 for 2 or 3 for 1 against Javante. So
yeah. I think his days are. I think that's an overvalue. I think if he was a little bit lower, he's worth a swing at startup ADP. I would imagine that the trade market's a little softer than that.
I would think so too.
I can't imagine that anybody is trading Trey Benson for Javante.
No.
So I got to think that
the 205 for Javante Williams, basically, that I can't see that happening.
Yeah, so I got to think the trade market's a little softer, and so Javante might actually be somebody that's worth taking some cheap swings on just in case. But personally, I don't see it. I think that his if we're gonna like percentage make or break, I think he's like 75% gonna break this year.
Yeah,
and he's got a small chance to really kind of reestablish himself.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
All right, my second guy that we're going to talk about is Christian Watson, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. He can't stay healthy, and that receiving room is so crowded. There's so many playmakers on that offense. And here's my worry with Christian Watson is that I think that if he's got another season where those hamstrings can't hold up, the coaching staff is going to move on. He might still be on the team next year, but he's not really going to be a big part of the plan because he can't stay on the field. And so availability is one of the best assets that you can have as an NFL player. If you can't get on the field, then the coaches can't game plan for having you on the field. And that hurts the offensive minds on the team. And so this season, I think, is really going to be an important season for Green Bay Dynasty assets because I think by the end of this year, we're kind of going to have a good idea of the pecking order. There's a lot of speculation. A lot of people have their own like personal opinions. Some people like Wicks, some people like Reed, some people like Watson, some people like Dubs. Everybody can make a case for their guy because all of these receivers are pretty young and they're pretty talented and they all showed flashes last year. I think that there was a lot of figuring it out last season on how they wanted to kind of prioritize targets and what kind of offense they wanted to be. And then also Jordan Love just kind of developing and coming into his own after finally, being the full-time starter. I think by the end of the year, they kind of started to figure that stuff out. And now they got a whole off season with a year's worth of tape on all these receivers that they can evaluate and a year's worth of rapport with Jordan Love. And then they can start to kind of tweak their offense. And I think that we will see by the end of the year, okay, this is clearly like everybody's going to get some love in this offense, but these are the guys that you really want. Mm-hmm. And if Christian Watson can't get into that conversation for whatever reason, either can't stay healthy or he's just getting outproduced by the talent around him, then I don't think he's going to get a better opportunity. I think that moving forward, he will be kind of like a Jameson Williams guy where it's like, he clears out for the rest of the team. He's talented, he's useful to the offense, but he's got injury concerns and he doesn't get the ball enough. And he's the fourth target on the team. He's going to have to deal with all of those things. And right now he's still being valued as that could be Jordan Love's wide receiver one in a really good offense. So he's still got that big upside baked into his value. And if he does not take advantage of that this year, that's all going to wither away. And he's going to be Jameson William Price next year, unless he can really take advantage of his opportunity.
Did you see how much the NFL invested in him in regards to that hamstring issue?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that.
Yeah, they invested about $4 million to find out that I think what was his right hamstring was 75% stronger than his left or something like that. I forget what it was.
Which feels like a very big gap.
Yeah, it is a huge gap. But to be honest, he probably is, when healthy, the most talented receiver on that team, for me anyway. He's a big play threat, big body wide receiver. It's just with him, you can't really depend on him that often. Like you mentioned, every training camp, well, not this year so far, it's like Christian Watson is, limping to the sideline with a hamstring injury. During the games, it's the same thing. You're getting your sleeper notifications. Christian Watson has left the game with an apparent hamstring injury. It's just, I don't know. It's one of those things. It remains to be seen with him.
The other thing that I wanted to mention was that as a dynasty asset, even if Christian Watson has a good season, it's going to be hard for people to start to trust him that okay, he's going to stay healthy next year too. Do I really want to buy him at the new price because he had a good year and then maybe he hurts his hamstring again next season? Maybe he just got lucky. So he's going to be a player that I think their trade value grows slowly, but could disintegrate very fast if things don't go well. So that's something you want to keep in mind if you're trying to buy and stash, maybe thinking, I can flip him later. It might not be that easy because people are going to be skeptical. They're going to want to see it for more than one season, typically on a guy that has proven to be pretty injury prone.
Yeah. And when guys that have been injured a lot in the past get injured, it affects their value way more than it does someone who's been healthy their whole career.
Yeah. Well, and it's also the types of injuries, right? He's not having these weird freak, like somebody rolled up on his leg and his femur snapped. He's got soft tissue, lower body, that kind of stuff happens over and over and over again. It's so hard for those guys to stay healthy historically. That hamstring, quad, those calf strains, those injuries, if you're prone to them, then it's so hard to stay healthy throughout a season, just because of the intensity of the position that they play at wide receiver. So it's definitely going to be something that even if he stays healthy this year and he has a good season, people are still going to be like, but did he get lucky or is this fixed? Is it going to? So that's just something to keep in mind when you're rostering him and thinking maybe you can flip him for a bigger price later.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, we got 3 more guys that we are going to talk about right after this.
Are you looking for the latest and greatest in fantasy football insights? Well, look no further than toiletstotitles.com. Our website is your go-to destination for all things fantasy football, offering an endless stream of articles, rankings, and analysis to help you dominate your league. From weekly waiver wire targets to in-depth player profiles, we've got you covered with the insight you need to make informed decisions and stay ahead of the competition. So why wait? Head over to toiletstotitles.com today and take your fantasy game to the next level.
All right, guys, we got 1 more each that we're going to be going through here on our Make It or Break It episode. Let's go ahead and start with Mike this time. Mike, who is guy number 3 for you?
All right, I got to get ready for this one. So, to be honest, this has nothing to do with his NFL value because I think this player is probably one of the safest NFL players in the league right now.
Okay.
Because his fantasy value is at make or break for me. And it's Trevor Lawrence, quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think if we were to go back and look at every Superflex startup for the past 3 years, his value has just dropped. Last year, I can remember just distinctively him going at the 1.7 to 1.10 range pretty regularly. And now we're talking about a guy who's going at the end of the second round in Superflex startups. That is That is a major concern. Now, they've added a little bit to that offense with Brian Thomas. He still has his main guys in Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. They added Gabe Davis, which I don't really think is much of anything. But they've added elements to this offense that they really haven't had before. The Calvin Ridley experiment didn't really work out well. A lot of drop passes in the end zone for Calvin Ridley. So we might have had a better, outcome for Trevor Lawrence last year. But to be honest, this dude has never really lived up to the generational talent that he came out of the draft with. Like I said, I do think he's like a super safe NFL player, but his dynasty value, it's almost panic mode. And this is really the make or break season for Trevor Lawrence for me. Yeah. Like if he doesn't end up in the top 12 this year, yeah, it's fair to say he falls out of top 12 dynasty rankings for me because he's right at 12 now, I believe. I would have to go look.
Yeah, I feel like he's in danger of falling into that kind of like Jared Goff category of just like super okay, like solid real life quarterbacks who like are okay for fantasy, but just like don't really offer you that super high ceiling that some of the running quarterbacks and just like more talented quarterbacks offer you. But
I have Trevor Lawrence directly at 12. So if this season does not end up as like a top 10 finish, he's going out of there. He has to.
Yeah. What do you think's holding Trevor Lawrence back? I mean, initially we thought it was the coaching staff, and it probably was in that rookie season, but what's the deficiency now? Because I don't think any of us can argue that he was one of the greatest quarterback prospects we evaluated. What is stopping him from really living up to that expectation that he had coming into the league? I think all that talent is there. I don't think we all imagined it. I think it was very real, and it's just not showing itself on the field regularly.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of, I still think, up until this year, the talent was kind of still middling, to be honest with you. I also think Doug Peterson, mind you, is a major upgrade over Urban Meyer, but is he the greatest head coach in the world? I don't know. We started to see Doug kind of slip after the Super Bowl, like every single year. So, the Jags had that one playoff run, and then after that, it's kind of been downhill for here. His job's on the hot seat this year for sure. And I just don't think and I think part of it is he's not as flashy as the other guys. He's not going to throw for like 400 yards a game. He's not going to throw for 5-6 touchdowns a game in the NFL. It just doesn't seem like that's his thing. You know what I mean? I don't really know how to describe it for Trevor Lawrence.
I think part of it, like for me, I'm pretty much still all the way in on Trevor Lawrence. I think we have really high expectations a lot of times for young quarterbacks because like we talk about this with receiver a lot, with how Jefferson and Chase ruined everybody's expectations of rookie receivers. Like I feel like that's happened with quarterback too, with Mahomes, even though he wasn't a rookie. And we just had Jordan Love and CJ Stroud in all their first years starting, Justin Herbert do really well. But there are so many quarterbacks who like, a little further back in history who it just took them like 4, 5, 6 years to like really become elite. Like somebody like Ben Roethlisberger or like even Tom Brady, really, like they were just kind of okay early in their careers, and then they completely got to another level.
I mean, this is his 4th year, though. Like, we're going into year 4, and to be honest, like, he's at a 58-39 touchdown to interception ratio, which that's not great.
Yeah. No, his first year, I honestly like don't even consider to be a real season.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll give you that.
But I also like last year, he also just suffered from like kind of some unlucky variance with, you talked about it with the drop touchdowns. Like I think there were 2 or 3 interceptions that bounced directly off of Tank Bigsby's hands. There were a few other
out of this.
Yeah, he had a tough year. They're just like a lot of little things like that where just things that tend to regress to the mean that didn't go his way, and hope if they do in the future, his production might look a little better.
We hope so. We really do hope so because, like I said, like I grabbed a bunch of Trevor Lawrence in startups this year because he was falling into the mid-second, late second, and I thought that was just great value. But now it's like, I might be pushing that panic button soon.
If it makes you feel any better, I took him in our T2T gold or silver draft, whichever one. Took him at the 204.
Yeah.
And I was kind of iffy about it at the time, but I think I feel better about it now the more I've looked into him.
I think at the very least he is a safe asset because the Jags are not moving on from him anytime soon.
Yeah, that's like I said. Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere football wise.
That allows you to have some good floor there. Especially in a super flex environment, a starting quarterback's value can only go so low, and so it allows you to have a safety net on your pick. All right, AJ, who is your last guy that you want to talk about?
Okay, another kind of on theme to the Zamir White thing. One, because it's one of your guys, and two, because this is really his first chance at getting like a legitimate starting job. And it's Will Levis. I think
this guy's coming at us today.
I know. Yep. No, I am. I won't deny that. I think the Titans are doing a really smart thing where they weren't able to like go out and really get elite pass catching weapons around Levis, like young, like draft somebody really, really high, or just get one of like some young elite receiver. So they kind of went in the bargain bin and got really good. Well, okay, they paid a lot of money for Calvin Ridley, but
we just shit on Calvin.
He's just not that good. But they got veteran talent around Will Levis to where I think by the end of the season they're going to know whether or not he is like can be their quarterback of the future. Like when we've had quarterbacks like Justin Fields and Zach Wilson who have had such terrible weapons that for a while we questioned like, oh, maybe just if the situation was better. But with Will Levis, I think we're going to know after next year what the answer is. So if he has not a good year, I think his value will go down a lot compared to like what happened with Bryce Young last year, where his value, like his situation was so bad that his value is kind of still maintaining a little bit. Obviously it's dropped, but the floor hasn't fallen out. I don't think Will Levis has that luxury.
Yeah, I had Will Levis as a my guy, but I almost did put him on a make or break because while I think he's a my guy, while I think he could perform well with the situation that the Titans have given him, it really is a make or break for him because they're not heavily invested in him. He was an early second-round pick. I believe he was the first pick in the second round because of the Dolphins, losing their first-round pick or whatever. But, if he doesn't work out well, that means they're going to end up at the beginning of this draft because they don't have a really good offense. Well, they don't have a really good defense, sorry. And if he doesn't perform well, that means they don't have a very good offense. So they could easily be one of the top picks in the draft and have, quarterback on the mind. So I think he's a my guy, but it really is make or break.
So here's my opinion on Will Levis, and it's that he's either going to be so bad that you absolutely cannot argue against replacing him, or he's going to be really good. I don't think he's going to be one of those guys that's in the middle where it's like, I think he can probably do it if we give him a little more time. No, I think that he's the type of quarterback that after watching him play for a season, you're going to know whether or not he's terrible and he just doesn't have it, or if you've got something that you can roll with here. There's not going to be a gray area with Will Levis because that's just not how he plays football. It's not how he's ever played football. He is going to either crush it with the Titans this year and be somebody that they want to build around, or he's going to be a complete dumpster fire and they're going to get a really nice draft pick.
Agreed.
I agree.
And the last guy that we're going to talk about here is my third and final make or break player of the 2024 season, and it is Mr. Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets. so long now, it seems we've been talking about Garrett Wilson like he is a perennial wide receiver one in fantasy football. And all I hear about is how awesome he is and how talented he is. And he's just so great. He's not produced for fantasy football at all, even a little bit at any point during his career. I think that's because of terrible quarterback play, but he hasn't done it. And yet I still see him drafted, traded for, and talked about like he is up there with the top tier receivers, and he's just not. And I think that I will preface this by saying I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to mostly be healthy this year. I'm not predicting an Aaron Rodgers injury that's going to impact Garrett Wilson. But that being said, if Garrett Wilson doesn't have a good year this year, I don't know how anybody can possibly continue to defend him. I think that he has, I think with the pedestal that he's been put on and the hype that's been put around him, in my opinion, a little undeservedly, if he's not a wide receiver one or very, very close to it, with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the football this year, I cannot see any path where his value does not shrink, because you're not going to be able to defend him any longer.
Why do we value Garrett Wilson so much higher than George Pickens, or George Pickens
I don't.
has had a better season with probably worse quarterback play in Kenny Pickett, or close to it?
I didn't know. Wow. I have a very different opinion of Garrett Wilson than you.
I really like Garrett Wilson. I think
from a talent perspective, Garrett Wilson is light years ahead of George Pickens.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
As a fantasy producer, he most certainly is not to this point in his career.
Yeah, no, but I would still, if he plays just as well next year, like from a just film and like the things that he is doing perspective, but doesn't produce like a true elite receiver, I will still be in on him personally. But then I might just end up like you with Kyle Pitts now, like another year later.
Yeah.
So
one more year. Next year's the one, I promise. Yeah. Here's my problem with Garrett Wilson is not the player. My problem with Garrett Wilson is that he is valued so far above what he has produced to this point in his career. And we do that a lot with fantasy assets. And for the most part, it sets them up to be failures. I think that for most people, if you ask them if Garrett Wilson is a wide receiver one, in their opinion, they will tell you yes. He is a fantasy wide receiver one. I think that that's where he's going to score, et cetera, et cetera. That's what people value him as in trades. That's what people draft him as in startups. They draft him and trade for him as a wide receiver one. He's not been a wide receiver one in the first 2 years of his career. He's barely been a wide receiver two. Mm-hmm. And that's in full PPR. and half point PPR, I think that he's been a wide receiver three, or close to it. And so if Garrett Wilson does not have a smash year, I cannot see a situation where things don't start to go downhill for him value wise. And it's not like the other thing that you got to think about here is Aaron Rodgers is like 47 years old. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but he's ancient, man. He's not going to be here very long. Even if he has a relatively healthy, good season, there's still a high likelihood this is the only year that he's going to play for the Jets. Mm-hmm. And he could very well retire at the end of this year, especially if, like, let's say the Jets don't have a stellar season. They miss the playoffs or a first round exit or whatever. Does Aaron Rodgers really want to come back again? Probably not. At that point, who's quarterbacking for the Jets? Let's say that they do pretty well this year and they don't have a good draft pick. And then Aaron Rodgers retires. Who's throwing the ball to Garrett Wilson now? I mean, I don't see his situation is not one that I'm excited about long term. And so he hasn't shown that he can be a wide receiver one in a bad situation. And so I think that he's really got to produce at an elite level to get people on his side moving into the 2025 offseason, because I think he could see a downgrade at quarterback again next year. And so he's going to need that elite production from 2024 to stand on to justify his value.
Yeah, like I said, he's still in my top 8 of Dynasty wide receivers, but it's hard to give him the excuses that George Pickens continues not to get. And I mentioned George Pickens again because I was just looking at their stats side by side, and it's just like, it's hilarious that George had more touchdowns, more receiving yards on less receptions than Garrett Wilson did. So I just find that hilarious.
Well, and the other thing is that, are you really going to be able to value Garrett Wilson as a wide receiver 1 next year if he doesn't have a good year, when you've got Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, all of these young, hyper-talented receivers that came into the league this year? Plus, there's a couple of really good receivers coming into the league next year. Like, how long can we save that spot for Garrett Wilson before we make him earn it? And I think the answer is he's got to do it this year, or he's got to fall back.
Who do you think has a better fantasy season, Drake London or Garrett Wilson?
London.
Wilson.
I would comfortably say Drake London.
I'm going to go with London as well. I think we're going to have the discussion.
Preface that by both quarterbacks are staying healthy all year and playing at a good enough level.
To be fair, I mean, I would still be okay. I mean, if Michael Penix came in and Aaron Rodgers was still the quarterback for the Jets, I'd still feel pretty comfortable with Penix at quarterback. But I think we need to have the discussion next year if Drake London outproduces Garrett Wilson to put Drake London ahead of Garrett Wilson, in my opinion.
I think Drake London is a prime candidate to see his value skyrocket this year.
Yeah, same.
I think a lot of people are out on Drake London, or have gotten to that point with Drake London because of the slow start to his career. I think that he's going to benefit greatly from a real quarterback for the first time. Like I said, everything I said about Kyle Pitts, I was also saying about Drake London. I don't know. Like, Garrett Wilson is a player to me that I don't understand how he's still so high on people's boards after consecutive seasons of not even coming close to where he's valued.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think it's put up or shut up time for him. He's got to do it this year, because there's too many other talented receivers that are gonna take that spot from him, and he's gonna get pushed way down the draft board if he does not come in and produce at a high level this year. So if you own Garrett Wilson, you better hope that he has a good year, because I don't think you're gonna get very much for him next season if he does not.
Go get London Plus.
Yeah, I would do that. I would tear down to Drake London and get something on top for Garrett Wilson right now.
Right now, absolutely. I'm trying to flip Puka. Well, this is off topic, but I'm trying to flip Puka Nacua for Drake London Plus.
I do that too. But I have high confidence in Drake London because very similar to Garrett Wilson, I think he's a really good player who's just not had anybody worth a damn throwing him the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But again, now you're going to have somebody that's competent throwing the ball. You got to go show that I'm correct and that I had faith in you for good reason. These guys are not going to get much more leash from anybody, I would imagine, in the fantasy community. So, any final thoughts? Any things that you guys want to touch on real quick before we head out?
If you have trade offers sitting in your inbox, just go friggin' answer them. I almost cursed. I don't know if we're allowed to, but just go answer them. It's a pet peeve of mine. Somebody said it on Twitter, like, I forget who it was. I think it was Kevin Coleman of Devreux Royale who mentioned that you should respond to your trade offers in a timely manner. Like, I am tired of like my home leagues where they sit for 8 days in a row. I'm like, yeah, this is ridiculous.
Just hit the decline button if you're not interested, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Easy. What about you, AJ? Anything you want to touch on before we head out for the night?
Nope, I got nothing.
All right, guys. Well, I don't know what we're going to be doing next week. I haven't given it a whole lot of thought yet, but stay tuned. I'll come up with something, and we'll get it posted up for you guys tomorrow or on Saturday. Until then, guys, I hope everybody has a great week, has a great weekend. I hope that you kill your drafts that you're in right now, and except for AJ, because he's in a draft with me, and I hope he does terribly. Other than that, guys, I hope everybody kills it this weekend, and I'll see you next time.
Later.